Welcome to the Learning Summit podcast, where we explore the big ideas shaping the future of learning in the workplace. Today, we're diving into a hot button issue, AI ethics in corporate learning. Joining me to break it all down is Sean Gilligan, founder of Webanywhere, a leader in e-learning and workplace learning solutions. Sean, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to join you for this important conversation.
Sean, AI is revolutionising workplace training, but it's also raising a lot of ethical concerns. What's the most pressing ethical issue you see in corporate learning today?
For me, it's twofold. First, there's the issue of fairness and inclusivity. AI systems are often trained on historical data, which means they can reinforce biases. In the corporate context, this can manifest as inequities in how learning opportunities are distributed. Second, and just as important, is data privacy. Organizations need to think very carefully about how they're collecting, storing, and using employee data.
That's a great point. You mentioned bias. Can you give an example of how this might play out in a workplace learning program?
Sure, imagine an AI-powered system that recommends training courses to employees. If the algorithm is trained on biased data, say past instances where certain roles were predominantly filled by one demographic, it could perpetuate that bias by recommending advanced training primarily to certain groups, leaving others out. This can widen skill gaps rather than close them.
So how can organizations address this? How do we make AI systems fairer and more transparent in the workplace?
Transparency is key. Companies need to work with vendors who can explain how their algorithms work and provide visibility into the data being used. Beyond that, organizations should audit their AI systems regularly to identify and address any unintended biases. It's also crucial to involve employees in the process, letting them know how these systems work and giving them a way to provide feedback.
And what about accountability? Who's responsible if something goes wrong, like a biased recommendation or a data breach?
That's a tricky one, Alex. Ultimately, responsibility lies with the organization implementing the AI, even if they're using third-party tools. Companies should have clear policies in place, including checks and balances to ensure their vendors are compliant with ethical and legal standards.
Let's pivot to something positive. AI is also creating incredible opportunities in corporate learning, particularly with upskilling and reskilling employees. Can you talk about how AI is helping organizations meet these challenges?
Absolutely. AI excels at identifying skills gaps by analyzing employee performance data and matching it with the skills required for specific roles. This means companies can create highly personalized learning paths. For example, an employee transitioning into a leadership role might receive tailored training on strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, and decision-making based on their current strengths and areas for improvement.
That sounds powerful. But doesn't it also raise concerns about employee surveillance?
It does, and that's why transparency is so critical. Employees need to know what data is being collected, how it's being used, and how it benefits them. When people understand that the goal is to support their growth rather than monitor their every move, they're more likely to embrace these systems.
Another big topic is automation. Many worry that AI might replace corporate trainers or even eliminate jobs. How do you see the role of trainers evolving in an AI-driven world?
AI is great at handling repetitive tasks like grading quizzes or scheduling training sessions, but it can't replicate the human elements of learning, like building trust, mentoring, and fostering a collaborative environment. Trainers will become more like coaches or facilitators, focusing on higher value activities while leaving routine tasks to AI.
So it's more about augmenting human capabilities than replacing them.
Exactly. The goal should be to create a partnership between humans and AI, where each plays to their strengths. Trainers bring empathy, creativity, and cultural context, things AI simply can't replicate.
Let's talk about trust. How can organizations ensure employees trust AI tools in the workplace?
Trust starts with communication. Organizations need to be upfront about how AI is being used and why. For example, if an AI tool is recommending learning paths, explain the criteria it's using. Involve employees in the conversation, ask for their input and address their concerns, and always prioritize ethical use of data. Employees need to know their privacy is respected.
And what happens when that trust is broken?
It's very hard to rebuild, which is why organisations should proactively address potential issues before they arise. That means implementing ethical AI practices from day one and being transparent about mistakes when they happen.
Looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of AI in corporate learning?
I'm excited about the potential for truly personalised lifelong learning. Imagine a system that follows an employee throughout their career, constantly adapting to their evolving goals and skills. I'm also intrigued by the idea of using AI to foster collaboration, connecting employees with peers who have complementary skills or shared interests to work on projects together.
That's a fascinating vision. Do you see any hurdles to getting there?
The biggest hurdles are cultural and regulatory. Companies need to embrace a mindset of continuous learning and be willing to invest in the infrastructure to support AI. At the same time, regulators need to establish clear guidelines to ensure AI is used ethically and responsibly.
Sean, this has been such an insightful discussion. Before we wrap up, what's your advice to companies that want to leverage AI in their corporate learning programs while staying ethical?
My advice is to start small and think strategically. Choose AI tools that align with your goals and values and work with vendors who share your commitment to ethics. Train your employees and leaders on how to use AI effectively and always prioritize transparency and trust.
Great advice. Finally, where can our listeners go to learn more about how Webanywhere is helping organizations navigate AI in corporate learning?
They can visit webanywhere.com. We've got resources, case studies, and tools to help companies make the most of AI in their training programs while staying ethical.
Sean, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Alex.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Learning Summit podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time as we explore more ways to transform workplace learning.